Welcome to Wheels, Deals, and Meals, where we talk all things good food, good business, and good cars. And now, here is your host, Arnold Gasita, founder and CEO of Petra Automotive Products. Let's roll.
Well, I'm excited to be here at Common Bond. Joel and Victor, always gracious to allow us to come film at their places, and this is just one of their many places. But if you have not been to Common Bond, I think there's 9 or 10 locations in Houston. Go to a Common Bond and have one of these things. It's phenomenal. This particular one is my favorite. But today we have Trey Little on the show. He's the president of National Christian Foundation in Houston. And Trey, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
So good to see you.
You always look sharp. You know that? Like you can wear shorts and look sharp. You know, it's like shorts and a jacket, and I don't know. It just
You're just a good leader. You just follow the leader.
no, I don't know. You dress pretty good, my brother. You dress
Appreciate
pretty
you.
good.
Back at you.
Yeah. So in the Trey Museum,
Yeah.
one of these days when there's a Trey Museum, what is the car that needs to be in the Trey Museum?
Well, I mean, I think the funny thing for me is I'm not a huge car guy. Meaning, you know, I've watched some of your shows and people know a lot about fast cars or Maseratis or, you know, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm really kind of an SUV, kind of a truck guy. But I think if I had to put 2 cars, and I'll just use what I've owned. Like if I could buy my dream car right now, I'd probably buy like a Yukon or a Tahoe or something. You know, I just like it. I like to sit up a little bit. I like it. I like the outdoors. But I think about the 2 cars that I have owned. One of them was a 1977 green Grand Fury. It was my first car when I turned 16 years old. I have an older brother and an older sister. My dad had, when he was alive, my dad had said, okay, well, everybody's going to get a car on their 16th birthday. Well, business was pretty good when my sister turned 16, and business was pretty good when my brother turned 16. Business was not very good when I turned 16, but my dad held true to what he said, and so I got my grandmother's 1977 green Grand Fury. Had 2 bench seats, one in the front, one in the back. Had a radio in the front that you had like 3 AM buttons you pushed,
Right.
and 2 FM buttons that you pushed.
Classic, though.
I mean, everybody remembers my car from high school.
Yeah.
And I was a nervous wreck about, you know, Dad, I'm not going to drive. He goes, well, do you want to drive that car or do you want to ride your bike to high school? So the 1977 Grand Fury would have to make it in there. And the other one,
and it's classic. I like that one.
it's classic. The other one would be a 2001 black Ford F250 Diesel. And why that truck would make it in was the first church I served was in a little small town called Albany, Texas, which is 35 miles northeast of Abilene. And I'd always wanted a pickup. And I had a buddy of mine that lives in Dallas, and he had a business, and he had this truck. And I'm talking about this isn't a work truck. This truck is nice. Leather seats, big wheels on it, you know, diesel, 4-wheel drive, jacked up a little bit. Well, anyway, he knew that I had always wanted a truck. And I don't remember what year it was. I was pastoring that church. So it might have been 2005, 2006 or something like that. And he said, you've always wanted a truck. Isn't that right? And I go, yeah, I have. I just can't really afford it. He goes, all right, well, it's good to know. Then he shows up into Albany, however many weeks later, and he gives me this Ford F250 truck.
Wow.
And I go, what is that? He goes, just want to bless you. And it was a truck that he had in his fleet, you know, or whatever, but nevertheless, generosity, I was just brought to tears by his generosity. So that truck means a lot too, because it was so many other lessons underneath that hood than just the truck.
I will tell you that a lot of people pick the cars they had when they were younger, maybe the first car or a car that they went on the first date or when they first got married or whatever. But they all, those cars are special because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there is a memory attached.
No doubt.
There's an emotional, doesn't matter if the car was purple, pink, there's an emotional attachment, right? First car, grandmother's car,
Yep.
Dad owned up to his word.
Yep.
Car was cool and it's a classic, but there's some emotion here.
Yep.
And then somebody blesses you,
Yep.
right? Ask you what you want, what you like,
Yep.
regardless of whether it's used or new, fleet or not, somebody took the keys of something that they bought and said, I'm gonna give to you.
And literally gave it to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, but you're 100% correct. You know, I mean, it's like that old Clint Black song, you know, there's something about a melody that brings back a memory. It's the same concept with this. You know, it's, I haven't had a ton of cars, but there's some great memories with both of those.
Trey, we got to get you a lot of cars.
I need some cars.
You need some cars.
I need some cars.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I need like a, yeah.
All right, of all the places you've traveled, what's your favorite?
I had a really good trip to the Holy Land.
When I was a senior pastor in San Antonio, it was a joy. I took 80 people to the Holy Land and my family. And to experience that, not just from a pastor perspective, but with my family and then with my church family, or at least a portion of it, these 80 folks, that was really, really good. Another great trip, another great spot that I'd go back to is a place called Jumby Bay.
Where's that?
Because you fly into Antigua, and then you take a little boat over, like a little ferry over, 6-minute ride to literally this island. There's like 30 rooms on the island, not a big high rise, nothing to do but to go to the beach or go to the pool or go eat, but it's 5-star, just feel like you're a king, you know.
I love that. That's nice.
And for me, it was something, probably one of the nicest things I've done in terms of like that kind of experience. It was really special with my wife, yeah.
What about bucket list? What is the place that you have not been to that you want to go to?
Yeah, I've never been anywhere in Europe.
Really? That surprises me.
I mean, I've been on mission trips to Haiti, Africa, Mexico. I've been out, right? I've never been.
You got to go north, Trey.
Enough. I've never been to London. I've never been to.
Paris.
People say never been to Paris. Never been to like Italy. Never been to.
The neat thing about Europe is that that bucket list, when you get to whatever, London, then you can take a week or two and go trains.
Yeah.
So you can go, you know, hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, you're in Paris.
Yeah.
Right? You can take these bullet trains and just see 3, 4, 5 countries.
Yeah.
In that trip.
Yeah.
You know, and the train experience is pretty neat too. Just don't take a lot of bags.
No. Well,
you know, hopping on that bag on the
might be
train and
hard
hopping
for
the
me
bag
to-
off is.
yeah. You know, how am I supposed to look good if I can't take off my bags?
I get it. You didn't want to down dress for that one. You didn't want to down dress for that. What's your favorite food?
You know, I got a weakness for Mexican food, but I also got a weakness for French fries.
Okay.
My wife and I will go eat. We'll go to dinner, whatever, and we might get a salad, but we're going to try the French fries. Like almost everywhere we go, we try the French fries.
You want to check out the French fries.
And I do most of the eating of the French fries.
Yeah.
But I think I'm being a Texas boy.
You know, my dad is that way.
Is that right?
My dad is a French fry guy.
I love Mexican food. I love food, but I would say probably a go-to would be Mexican food.
Okay.
What about you? What's your favorite?
I love Tex-Mex.
Yeah, me too.
I love, you know, when it comes to, you know, Papacitos or Lupes, I think that's, to me, the best fajitas.
Best fajitas, yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, that's what, I love that. I can eat that every day, all day long.
Yeah.
It does not bore me.
Me either.
You know,
Me
taco, enchiladas, fajitas, I'm in.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And about
Chips-
18
chips
bags
and salsa,
of chips
yeah.
and salsa. Yeah.
Maybe a you know, 1 or 2 margaritas.
Yeah, why
You
wouldn't
know,
you?
it's funny because my wife got me on skinny margaritas.
That's what my wife drinks.
Yeah, and so I kind of liked it. I said, yeah, well, that's not bad. It's not too filling. It's not
Right.
It's kind of light.
Yep.
So I forgot where we were. Oh, we were at a Petra distributor event.
Okay.
A lot of these are distributor owners. A lot of automotive guys,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Bourbon mainly guys,
Oh.
right? And so I got on this kick with my wife about the skinny margaritas. So I'm at this event and the guy says, what do you want to drink? I said, skinny margarita. And he looked at me and he said, no, I'm not ordering that. Literally told us that because I just can't. If you want that, you order it yourself.
You're too manly.
I said, okay. I said, well, give me a bourbon then. You know?
That's probably like going in where I'll have a strawberry daiquiri. Like, no, I'm not bringing you that.
Yeah, I'm not bringing you that. Man. You either a real man's drink or you're not getting any drink at all.
I think that's great.
You know, so where were you born?
H-Town.
Really?
Born and raised in Houston, Texas.
This is your town.
I was. They jokingly said that they should have known that part of my problem is I was born at Herman Hospital right next door to the zoo. So that apparently has influenced my entire life thus far.
Is that really where you were born?
Honestly.
In the medical center?
In the medical center,
Wow.
Herman Hospital. Born and
Back
raised.
then, they probably Red Duke was around.
Probably.
Dr. Red Duke, you remember him?
Absolutely, man. He was a genius.
Yeah.
I loved him.
Okay, so you're born in H-Town. Where'd you go to high school?
So I went to high school, 2 different places. I started out at St. Thomas High School, Catholic high school over off Allen Parkway. Went there because that's where I lived in that part of town with my mom around the West Grace Shepherd area. And then I guess maybe midway of my sophomore year, maybe first semester of my sophomore year, I ended up moving out west Houston with my dad and stepmom. And I would take the city bus, Arnold, I would take the city bus from Memorial and Dairy Ashford all the way down to St. Thomas High School. And I'd get off that city bus and I'd walk up to the school, go to school, and then I'd get out of school and I'd walk back down to, you remember the old Otto's hamburger joint?
Yeah. Yes.
Huh?
Yes, I do.
The place was awesome.
Yes, it was.
Well, I would catch the city bus outside of Otto's and take it back down to Dairy Ashford Memorial.
How old were you when you were doing
Well, so I was a freshman and sophomore in high school. Before
So
I was
freshman,
16.
around 15?
Or 14, probably.
Yeah.
13 maybe even.
It's
13,
incredible,
14.
right? What a different world.
I know, and I thought to myself,
And people don't realize, people that are watching this may not realize, but that's probably, would you say that's at least 15 miles?
easy.
If not
Easy.
more?
Yes. I mean,
So
you're as far west as you can go, and you're almost downtown.
You're a 14-year-old kid.
Right.
Getting on a bus 15, 20 miles away from your destination.
Yep.
And all those stops along the way. Getting off, going to school.
Yep.
Maybe getting a burger on the way back, hopping back on the bus and going all the way backwards.
Yep.
Every day.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I thought to myself, and I'm not saying this is like,
I mean, if your kids today said, hey, Dad, I'm going to
That's-
get a bus for 20 miles.
that's my point. Like, you got to pick them up 20 blocks from here. Do you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, I didn't think anything of it.
yeah,
My
it's
dad
life.
said, okay, I'll take you down there to the metro stop, and there's a bus that drops off right up. Okay, I guess that's what you do. You know, but here I am at St.
questions asked.
Thomas High School, right? I'm with these folks, these great people, all these Catholic boys. I didn't grow up Catholic. I just
Yeah.
went to that school because
Right.
that's where they wanted me to go to school. But they, these guys are, I'm thinking, how am I going to fit in? I'm jumping off the city bus. And so anyway, I finally, midway my sophomore year, I moved out there. I told my dad, I said, Dad, look, I don't know all these people. We don't live in that part of the world. I've met some people in this, where we live now that go to Lee High School. Robert E. Lee High School used to be at Richmond and Voss. It's now called Wisdom or something like
Right.
that.
I was going to say, they changed the name.
So it used to be the HISD public school where my dad lived. That was the HISD school I was zoned for. So I went 2 more years there, or 2 years there and graduated from there. So I always tell everybody I went to St. Thomas High School and I learned how to study. And I went to Lee High School and learned how to
By
be social.
any chance, do you know a guy named Andrew Spafford?
No.
It's funny because we just did a podcast yesterday with Dr. Andrew Spafford, and he went to that school. Now, probably different years, obviously.
Probably.
But yeah, that's the school.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, we
so-
talked about the name change and the whole
Yep,
thing.
Yep. And honestly, back then when I went to high school, it was the place to go. That's where people went to public school, and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got a pretty well-rounded education. I went from high school, I went to Texas A&M for my college degree,
So you went to Texas A&M to study what?
business.
Okay.
My dad said, you're going to, my dad said, my dad went to A&M, my older brother went to A&M, my sister went to UT because she didn't want to go to A&M, but my dad said she had to stay in the state. And my dad said to me, I think it was joking, but I think it was serious. He said, well, you can go to school anywhere you want, but your tuition's paid at A&M. And so I went to A&M, business degree, started out in finance, and just, my dad said, basically, if you get that degree, you can get a
do so
job.
much with it.
You can
Right.
get a job, right?
Well,
so I went about,
you're an Aggie, and that's a cult in itself.
no doubt about it.
Because you're going to get a job anywhere, right?
No
Because
doubt.
if you
They
just say
see-
you're
they
that's
see
right, the
that
ring,
ring.
and you're
They
just,
see that ring.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't kiss that whenever.
I know. I was going to say, you got to kiss the ring.
My
when you-
gosh. Well, anyway, so I started out in finance, and then I was taking a lot of finance, liked it. But then I had a couple of roommates that were in accounting and finance that were a year ahead of me. And they were taking these 2 really hard accounting classes to get a finance degree. And I didn't really click with accounting. I didn't love accounting, didn't like it. But I knew to get a finance degree, I was going to have to take those. So I went to my, what are they called, my counselor or whatever, and said,
counselor.
so what degree can I get if I can take all the finance I want, but I don't have to take those 2 accountings? And the counselor said, well, you can get a marketing degree. I said, sign me up. So I did all
That's my new degree.
I did everything I wanted. Didn't have to take those 2 accountings and still got a business degree from A&M. Yeah.
So you got a business degree, minor in marketing?
Business degree marketing.
Business degree marketing. Graduated from A&M.
Yep.
So you are an official Aggie.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So everybody around Texas, anywhere there's an Aggie, they just they go towards the Aggie. It's a good
100%.
cult. You got to drink that Kool-Aid.
100%.
And it's in. All right. So then, what do you do after that? What's your first job?
First job, I got hired. Actually, I got hired before I graduated, and I went to work for a company called the Westcap Corporation in Houston, regional broker dealer. I sold fixed income investments to institutional accounts. So, banks back then, savings and loans, money managers, hedge funds, public funds. It was kind of my dream job. Like, I thought, this is what I want to do, and I actually got on with them a summer before my senior year. And then they ended up hiring me like around spring break of my senior year. And
Let me guess, they were Aggies too.
no, they weren't. I knew some people in the firm. I had been there in the summer. I guess maybe they saw that maybe I had a shot.
something?
Maybe, yeah, So got out of school, came back home, and then in that job I had to get licensed, take a Series 7, Series 63. And so for the first few months I was basically studying, taking the exams, Once you pass all that, then they kind of set you free and they give you a territory and you start you start smiling and dialing. So every bit of business I ever got over the 8+ years in that business, all was from the result of a cold call. And interestingly enough, they gave me the territory of Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire. My office was downtown Houston, but they gave me the Northeast. Here I am, born and raised H-Town, Texas guy, fresh out of college, calling Arnold at First Bank.
A country boy with an Aggie degree calling the guy in Boston.
I didn't lead with that, by the way. I didn't lead with that. But anyway, it turned out to work. It worked out pretty well. I started getting my legs under me and started seeing some results from the work I put into it. And
how long did you do that?
So I did that for a little over 8 years.
At the same company?
Same company. The same company didn't change. No, there were some name changes. There were some things happening with that company. So some of us had to go to another, but the bulk of it was at that company.
Yeah. 8 years later, what happens?
8 years later, roughly, I had an encounter with a lady at my church where I was attending. My wife and I were volunteering with the youth group, and she stopped me on the way out of youth group. We'd been volunteering for about 5 years, and she said, "Hey, Trey, do you have a minute?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, so-and-so is leaving. Our associate youth director for high school ministries is leaving to go to seminary." I said, "Yeah, I heard that." And she said, "Well, we're looking." I said, "Yeah, I know that too. I'll keep my ears open." And then she said, "Well, I wonder, have you ever thought about doing this full time?" Now, mind you, all I ever wanted to do was be in the bond business and make a lot of money and retire at 40 and play golf and hunt and fish. Like, I had it drawn up beautifully.
Typical Aggie.
Typical Aggie. And then we just end up going to work with somebody else. But anyway, so I had it all drawn up, and by this time I'm 28, 29 years old, something like that. I'm a senior vice president in my investment firm. I've got a house. I've got a baby. I've got a country club member. Like, I'm thinking in my mind, well, it's just going just as planned. Meanwhile, leading up to that encounter in that hallway at the church, I had been wrestling with, is this all there is, honestly? I had gotten involved in a Bible study. I'd rededicated my life to the Lord at a Promise Keepers, whatever. Like, things were happening. I had no idea why they were happening until that conversation happened. And so in my mind, I'm when she says, "Have you ever thought about doing this full time?" I said, "You've lost your mind." But anyway, long story short, I ended up, she goes, "Well, would you at least talk to the team?" I said, "Sure." So I go talk to the team over a course of a few interviews or whatever. They ended up offering me the job to be the associate youth director for high school ministries, and they're going to pay me $26,000 a year. So I had to process that for a minute. And then I go into my pastor and I said, hey, listen, they offered me the job. He said, yeah, I know. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to be ugly. I go, but it literally does not add up. He said, I understand. I said, but we're going to go on this mission trip down to Reynosa, right? Staying at the border of Mission, Texas, and go across to Reynosa to build houses. We're going to take these kids on this trip, these middle school kids that we've been volunteering with. We'll pray about it, and I'll let you know when we get back. He said, okay. And on my way out of his office, he said, hey, just don't underestimate what the Lord can do. So we go down on this mission trip and committed to praying about it. And I told my pastor I would let him know when we got back. And so the mission trip was to end on Friday. And Friday night of the mission trip, the guy that we had hired to do praise and worship and do the talks for the youth gets up and he says, well, tonight we're going to look at this scripture in Matthew. He goes, it's the scripture where Jesus goes up to Andrew and Peter and he says, hey, drop your nets and follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. And he said, now do you know what the next verse says? And he said, well, hold on a minute. Let me tell you what the next verse doesn't say. He said the next verse doesn't say that Andrew and Peter asked Jesus, how much does it pay? Do I get to keep the country club membership?
Yeah.
There's insurance coming
How
with
often
this.
do I get to play golf?
How often do I get to play golf? Arnold, honestly. I mean, he just went right down my list. And he said, no, he said the next verse says, at once they dropped their nets and followed him. So I'm sitting in the middle.
No questions asked.
Nothing. So I'm sitting in the middle of these middle school boys trying to be this cool volunteer, high roller in the investment business guy, right? And I just started to weep. And they're looking at me like, dude, get it together. They just read scripture.
You're the leader, man. Come on.
Hold it together. Anyway, all that to say, I, said to my wife after that, I said, we need to go. That's for us. And so I came home on Saturday, went into my investment firm on Monday and resigned and started at the church 2 weeks later as a
So
youth.
is that, now I know that God was tugging at your heart, and I know that you had gotten into this men's group and you were having these questions about, is this all there is?
Yeah.
But is that the moment at that camp with that speaker talking about when Jesus said, follow me?
Yeah.
The moment that you could say is you felt a calling?
100%.
That was the moment.
100%. And it was undeniable. Because it made zero logical human sense. And it was undeniable.
It was God telling you, don't ask questions.
I got you.
Follow me.
Follow me. Drop your net and follow
Easier
me.
said than done.
Oh, my Lord.
Easier said than done.
I mean, and it's true. And I think you don't have to not be in the car business or in the investment business. It's not that everybody, the only way that they're really answering the call of their life is to go into full-time ministry. I don't mean that at all. In many ways, as I look back over my years of it started with that answering the call into youth ministry, and that ended up answering the call to go to seminary, which was then me understanding that this calling was on my life from a pastoral perspective. And I still feel like I'm living out my calling in the ministry of generosity at National Christian Foundation because it's just who I am, right? Just living to make Jesus visible. That's what I want to do. That's what I feel called to do. But in that season of my life, as I look back on it, in many ways, I think there's a lot to be said about how that might have saved me. And I don't know that I can fully articulate that, but meaning it was undeniable, made no sense, had to go, the Lord provided. We struggled for a while, but a lot of that had to do with just the lifestyle that we had, changed. Yeah, we was trying to figure out how to do that. And I think sometimes we did better on some occasions than others, but it was like it's all I could think about. It's all I could do. It was all I wanted to do. It was my sweet spot. So
I remember one time.
Never ever those Aggies that I went to college with, not a one of them ever, myself included, would have thought I'd ever be in ministry.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. I can promise
There's
you
no
that.
doubt.
You need to get some of my buddies on your podcast and say, hey,
we'll have the reunion show.
Let's have the real story.
We'll have the reunion show. I remember a guy that I grew up with that went to Bible school. And I remember we were outside of the church one time. We were driving up. I forgot what we were doing, but we were in the car together. We were getting to church. And he had felt a calling, left to Bible college, came back, and then him and his wife had a situation, and then he's in the car and he's telling me this. He says, that calling never leaves.
No.
I don't want to use the word haunts you, but he's, he basically said that calling never leaves you.
Yeah.
It never leaves you.
Yeah.
If you have been called, we've all been called to do something, right?
Yeah.
But if
And
you
gifted.
and gifted.
Yeah.
But if you've been called to be a pastor, it's not going to leave you.
Yeah.
It is going to bother you till you can say, I'm in.
Yeah.
Right? So I get what you're saying. It just reminded me of that. Okay, so you now say, okay, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to drop the net. I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
No questions asked. What's the next thing that
Well,
happens?
there were a lot of questions asked. I mean, I'd like to think there wasn't, but yeah. So what was that?
So what's the next after that?
Yeah, so I go in, I took the job, I started 2 weeks later, and then about a few months into that, they make me the director of all the student ministries of this church, which at the time was probably 3,500, 4,000 member church. And then for a few years, and then my pastor took me to lunch and said, hey, you're doing great, but I think you have the gifts to do what I do. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, I think you have the gifts to be a senior pastor. And I go, well, what does that mean? He said, well, that means seminary. Well, then here we go again, right? We start to pray about that because I'm thinking, that's the last thing I want to do is go to seminary. Like, I think people that go to seminary, I hope I don't offend any of your listeners, but like in my mind, I was going, well, people that go to seminary, like they get the big head and they kind of get all fancy.
I went to seminary.
Huh?
I went to the blah, blah, blah seminary.
Whatever. And then they start talking. And I'm thinking, I just want to be a normal guy that loves Jesus and loves other
I'm a
people.
youth pastor, man.
Whatever. I just dropped my dad's. Whatever. You know? So anyway, I started to pray about that. And then, once again, it was just undeniable. Like, this is a calling on my life. I'm 100% unqualified, but it's undeniable that I need to do this.
Which should be the first thing on the application. Do you feel qualified? If you ever say yes, then you should not be
That's
on
right.
that
So
path.
we sold everything here, moved and went to seminary in Austin. I went to a Presbyterian seminary. That was the tribe I was a part of. It wasn't, and it was in the state of Texas. So that's really what made my decision there. I didn't apply anywhere else. And then I got out of seminary and was a senior pastor of 3 churches, a small church.
So you're leaving the church that when called you into the ministry, that you went to this church. That pastor says, I think it's time for you to grow up and go to seminary because I think God has more plans for you.
Correct.
You're leaving this church. You're going to seminary and you're leaving this church. Okay, so you go to seminary. How long did that take?
3.
3 years. Then you go.
Got a Master of Divinity, and then took my first church as a solo pastor in a little small town where I told you about the truck.
The truck.
Got the truck, when I lived in that little town. It's a gem of a place. Small little church. My first Sunday in that church. I've never been in a small church or a small town. I've lived in Houston, Texas, and was in a large church.
Right.
But it was the sweetest gift from the Lord. I'd spent the summer before I graduated seminary, 10 weeks we spent in this little town, and because they didn't have a pastor. So I went there. I said, I just want to see what it'd be like. If the Lord decided to call me to go to a small town, I just want to see what it'd be like. So I got to go there and live there for 10 weeks, preach every Sunday. Lo and behold, that's where I ended up going after seminary. And it was wonderful. People, salt to the earth people, still to this day, great relationships with them. But the first Sunday I was there was 35 people in worship. And I think there was like 6 kids and 2 of them were mine. And so it was so fun to see how the Lord grew that church and allowed me to be a pastor in many ways to the whole community, which I loved because it's a town of 2,000 people.
Yeah.
1 traffic light. But it's such a unique town. They've got a world class art museum. It's not what you would think of.
How long were you at that church?
Probably 9-10 years.
You go back to go, this is the place that
I was just there in June.
That God gave me the first church.
Yeah. And I started a little 501c3 there called the Feed Store. The whole design of it was to feed the youth, both spiritually and physically, because there was no place for the youth to hang out.
Yeah.
They'd go hang out in the Baptist parking lot, So raised some money and cast the vision and got people given from Houston, Dallas, Austin, California, wherever. And we built that place, and it still exists to this day, the Feed Store. Yep. And the church is great. We still love it there. And then I went from there to be the senior pastor at First Pres San Antonio. big church in San Antonio, and or certainly bigger than the town of Albany and the church I was in. And then did that for a few years, and then came back to Houston in 2014 to Grace Presbyterian Church, which is where it all started for me.
So
At 13 years, I started going to church there when I was 13, when I moved with my dad out west and catching the bus to St. Thomas High School. Started going to church at that church.
And so the journey that Christ took you on brings you back to Grace Presbyterian.
Yeah.
And did you start there as a senior pastor?
Uh-huh.
How long did you do that for?
6 years.
Wow.
And these are the people, mind you, not all of them were still there, but a lot of them were still there. These are the people that, some of them knew me when I was a youth. Some of them were my youth volunteers when I went to youth group there. Some of them were people that were volunteers with me when I was the youth guy there. Many of them were people that supported me and my family when I went to seminary. You know, I mean, this.
So it's
stayed on the
also
journey.
the church that you volunteered as a youth, that did the youth and
Yeah,
came.
yeah.
Wow, good story.
I've been around that church since 1982, probably, 81, something like that.
Okay, so that takes you 6 years. Then you decide to what?
Well, out of Grace. So I had kind of hit a place to where I was really wrestling with, I like joy. I like joy.
Joy is a good thing.
I think joy is
It's a great thing.
I mean,
joy, I know happiness and joy are different, but joy, happiness, peace, all wonderful things.
kind of like them.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of biblical.
Right.
Anyway, I was just kind of in a season where I felt like I'd lost some of my joy as a senior pastor. Actually, was a little bit caught off guard by it because I love Grace Presbyterian Church. The people have nurtured me in my faith journey. Do you know what I mean? But it was just kind of starting to take its toll on me a little bit, and so spent a long time trying to discern, and finally got to a place to where I felt like maybe the best thing was for me to step down without any idea what I was going to do next, honestly. But stepped down and took a few months off to kind of rest up a little bit, heal up a little bit, restore. And then it was really back on my knees saying, Lord, what are you going to do with me next? And this is kind of what you were talking about earlier about I think you used the word haunting, but it's that calling, that you feel.
Well, it's the stickiness of the calling.
It is. And so where I found myself, and unexpectedly, because I didn't, but I found myself in this place going, is it okay if I'm not a senior pastor? Like, I really wrestled with that. Am I going against what?
Is that part pride, though?
Well, it's very fair. And
Because
yes.
even in business, right? Sometimes if you're not the man, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I've been involved in, Fortune 250 companies before I opened Petra, right?
Yeah.
So you go from being an executive in a very large publicly held company to I'm going to start my own.
Right.
Let me open the door,
Yeah.
and we're here on the desk, trying to figure this thing out, and not being the man. I think there's a pride in that.
No doubt about it. And don't kid yourself. I'm a human like anybody else, right?
Yeah. But I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a man thing.
I think it's
a
totally,
human man
but
thing.
I think probably simple. For me to wrestle with, is it okay for me not to be a senior pastor? I think really in the moment of that wasn't necessarily the pride. Not to say that there had not been pride before, but in the moment of that, I think what it was for me was because I didn't have another church that I was going to go to. I didn't step down at Grace to go be a senior pastor at another church, which is what happened in the way it had all gone down, in previous moves. I think where I was wrestling with that was, is it okay for me not to be a senior pastor? Meaning, what if I don't go to another church? That's what I meant. I struggled with that.
Yeah, what is the next step is not a church.
That's exactly right. That's what I really.
You can still be in ministry.
And I am.
Yeah.
But my point is that I thought, am I messing something up? And so I really started to pray about that. Had a couple people that have discipled me that were really sweet to listen to me and help me discern, think through this, a coach. But anyway, so I started to pray about, well, what would it be like if I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit. I really liked it in the business world. I just got called out of it into ministry, but I still like kind of the art of the deal. I still like hanging with cool people like you. I still loved it, and I still have a business background. but I've got 20 plus years of pastoral leadership. And so I started praying about what if there was something that existed that those intersected. And then I looked at a few things like C12 and marketplace chaplains and, different things like that. And then I ended up getting introduced to National Christian Foundation, Houston. A guy named Bert Smith was the president then. Takes me to breakfast, or we got introduced through a couple's Bible study that he and his wife Gwen and my wife Niki and I are in, and he was looking.
That's how it starts.
That's how it starts. And honestly, I didn't know any. I mean, I knew people in my churches that had used NCF to give to the church. I didn't really know much more about it. So that's how it started. That's where it led me. And then,
how long have you been there now?
So I've been, it'll be close to 4 years now. And as of January of 24, they were kind enough to pass the baton of president to me. And so here I am now in the role of president of NCF Houston, and thankful to have a great team around me, and can't wait to see what the Lord's going to do.
Well, you're doing great. I'm not just saying that because you're the only president I've known in CF world.
Well, I think you were kind of surprised that an Aggie could even have that title.
I know. I'm still kind of in my head trying to process this whole thing, but maybe God's helping me walk through some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Tell people what NCF is all about.
National Christian Foundation, appreciate that. Been around for over 40 years, founded in 1982. At the heart of it, what we're about is helping people mobilize resources for the good of the kingdom. We want to be that trusted partner that comes on this generosity journey with you. Our value prop is really that we're aligned with you, from a Christian value perspective, but we're also really, really uniquely gifted in the expertise of this whole generosity space. We are uberly connected in the generosity ecosystem. But then we also think, at least I think, what really kind of sets us apart is that we're local. So I'm right here in Houston. For all those that want to explore this idea of biblical generosity, the joy of generosity, we're local. We're not a 1-800 number that you're calling some call center. We're here. And we do things like this.
There are people there.
There's people there.
There's a board there.
And so the simplest way to think about it, if you don't know what a donor advised fund is, but National Christian Foundation is the largest Christian platform for a donor advised fund in the country. And so what that basically is a generosity checking, savings, investment account. So it's a way for people who want to be generous, quite frankly, just to do it more efficiently, more effectively. And then we just come on the journey with you.
And hey, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I know that when as I've joined the board and I've talked to people about it, and I'm learning more of it, but I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I said, look, here is the Arnold Gacita quick version of this.
Yeah.
It's like a Christian Fidelity.
Well, Fidelity is a competitor, but that's what it is.
Okay.
Well, that's not fair to say
because if they don't know, right?
Yeah.
Or an investment, whatever.
100%.
You're going to now put the money that you believe you're going to give, and it's not one shot forever, into this
giving fund. We call it a giving fund.
Giving fund, and it will be invested and grow in interest, and you will be able to designate it according to the rules to wherever you want it to go, right? Under our Christian faith.
Make grant recommendations out of those generosity dollars.
That's right. Yep. And whatever you put into it today, even if you're not going to necessarily give it out till next year,
right,
it is a tax deduction today.
When you make the contribution, you get the tax benefit for that year in that year that you make that gift to your giving fund. And then you can grant it out, like you said, in a week, in a day, in a month, in a year, in 10 years, whatever. And then while it sits there, you can have those dollars invested. That'll make a few shekels. You're not going to triple, quadruple your money, probably, right? But you'll make something, and
that's not necessarily the purpose, right?
No, we're fans of we're fans of letting it grow before it goes, right?
Right.
But it affords people, and what a lot of people don't think about also is we are really, when I talked about NCF being the expertise that we have, I think what really sets NCF apart is what we can do in what we call the complex gift area, the
It's the leader in that space, right?
We really are the leader in that space. And so it's people like you that own your own business that have a heart for generosity, and the day comes that I think I want to give a piece of my business away before I sell my business, before I sell it, you can hold it. Like, we can take business interests, mineral rights, the devil's in the details and all of those things. But a lot of people don't understand the reality that 90% of most people's wealth is in something other than cash. So we'll take cash, and you can put cash or appreciated securities into your giving fund. That's great. But where people really start to kind of see the needle move are the people that are going, well, can I do something with that piece of real estate I own down the street? Can I do something with that business I own? That's where people start to go, I didn't even know you could do that. Much less the people that don't know what a donor advised fund is, and that's okay. But part of my job is I want to go and proclaim the gospel from the mountaintops, the gospel of Jesus Christ, but I also want to go out and proclaim the good news of National Christian Foundation, because I think that is part and parcel of what
And there's obviously a lot of very incredible, successful people out there, some that give and some that don't give as much as they should give.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, in my 33-year career, those that give are happier, have the joy, and are at peace.
No doubt.
Because they realize that it's not theirs. Like, I realize that every day is a gift from God, that everything that we have is a gift from God.
He owns it all.
He owns it all, and we are distributors of his wealth.
Yeah. Stewards.
Stewards of his wealth.
Yeah, we use the line all the time that I've never met an unhappy, generous person.
Right.
And I think that's
so true.
I think it's true. But I feel you're very generous in this time together, and there hadn't been a single check written, single dollar, so generosity I believe generosity is a way of life. And I think a lot of times people think that generosity is only about dollars.
Correct.
I think generosity,
it could be a number of things.
But so my passion around this now, Arnold, is I feel like if I get to be a conduit carrying the gospel and this idea of biblical generosity, if I get to be a pastor for that in what I call the ministry of generosity, I feel like I'm still part of having an impact on our city and the world around us.
Absolutely.
Because if I'm going to be generous and you're going to be generous, well, imagine if that spreads.
And where those dollars touch.
Or just
right?
where your generous spirit touches.
Yeah.
Imagine what impact that would have on our city and our culture. I just think it's just it's exciting to me.
So you asked me that before the show, we were talking about generosity. And sometimes people have a different definition of generosity. Yeah. Let's end the show with what you think generosity is.
Yeah, that's really good. I think I just said it. I think generosity is a way of life more than it is
a gift at a moment.
I do. I think it's a way of life.
I think so too. I think generosity is not just a gift for a cause or at a moment, but it's a way of life.
Yeah.
It's realizing that what you have and what you've been blessed with, my version, you said everybody has a version, right? My version, and I think it's somewhat biblical, that everything that you have has been given to you by God.
Yeah.
Belongs to him.
Yeah.
Sure, have the house, have the car, enjoy life. But it is to further the gospel.
Yeah.
And bless people with it and change lives and generations to come.
Yeah. I would just say it's a way of life, but I think it's a way of life in response to.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
In response to what you just said.
Yeah.
It's a way of life in response to what has been so gracious.
And then at the end, when everybody opens their account at NCF, they can then give to Petra Cares.
100%. We get you approved on that 501c3, baby. I love it.
You already approved it.
It's already good. Awesome.
All right. Website. Where can people go to find out more?
ncfgiving.com/Houston.
All right. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you and all you do.
You.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Wheels, Deals, and Meals, your main source for all things good and fun, business, food, and cars. If you like this episode, make sure to rate us and subscribe. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please leave a message at the link below. Till next time, happy eating.